What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is a totally different subject that you probably didn't even think that I knew about, but boy, do I know about Monster cable. So going back when I was 19 years old, I got hired. I was working at Circuit City selling electronics. They had some Monster cable there, but there was other brands. And I think this was kind of like a huge scam back in the 90s, mid 90s, early 90s, late 90s. But I think this company, the president at the time, his name was Noel Lee, was a freaking genius. So I'm going to give you my take on Monster cable. And throughout this video, I'm also going to show you some of the different cables. Now, this is a sales kit, super rare. And it shows some information about the M series. M series was really, they're considered like their high end. And a lot of other companies typically tried to follow suit, but some of you guys that are younger might have heard of this brand. Some of you guys that are older probably still have Monster cables. But here's my take on it. So basically, when someone would come in, and I was no schlep either, man. I was 19 years old, 20 years old, and we were always told to sell Monster cable. So if someone came in, again, this was a higher-end store called United Audio Centers, right outside the Fox Valley Mall here in Aurora, Illinois. But we had a lot of people with a lot of money in the area. People would come even from the smaller towns, and they'd come to our store and look for our expertise. So when you're a guy, typically, or someone buying a home theater system for their family or their brand new home, a lot of these clients would spend upwards of $1,000, $600, $700, $800 just on the receiver, and then on the speakers, pay me another $2,000, $3,000. I mean, we had like setups with like Denon, we had Pioneer Elite, we had obviously Sony. We didn't have Onkyo. That was Circuit City. We had definitely had Yamaha. Yamaha was a popular receiver brand. And did we have Harman Kardon? No, that was Circuit City. Again, this is going back a ways. This is from 1994, this kit. So anyways, as I was getting back at, is most families would spend about at least $3,000. Not including the TV, just for the audio system from us. Like that's really what we were known for. And on top of spending $3,000, it was very common to have someone actually spend another $200-$300 on cables. Yep, that's right. So here we have a S-video cable. So that was considered a little higher end for picture quality. That was a very interesting time too. So VHS was around for quite some time, and then you had Beta Max from Sony. But when I was selling electronics, we also had S-video. So S-video was a higher resolution. It was weird though, like they didn't sell movies, so you couldn't get like Star Wars or Disney VHS tapes with S-video, but we were selling a lot of DirecTV products at the time. Cable was kind of behind in the times. Their signal kind of sucked. I mean, it was okay, but again, this is back in the 90s. So those of you that live in Naperville or those areas now that have been there a while, that was all like farm. A lot of it was farmland. We went to a certain distance. But anyways, S-video was a little bit higher end, and a lot of people in the industry, like I know there's some other channels that have kind of talked down to Monster cable, like, yeah, they were a rip off, this and that. But you know what? This guy who made this company was a genius. The stuff looked great. And to me, it was almost like bragging rights. So it's like, okay, yeah, you could hook it up. Well, first of all, you bought a $1,000 receiver. No cables came in the box. Like, you're lucky to get a little plastic FM antenna, which was really like the little cheap little wire. But you would buy like $5,000 on speakers. You'd get no wire. Like, the manufacturers never included any wire. Now, if you got wire that was included, that means you were shopping at Radio Shack or you're buying some like really low end stuff. So This guy Noli created this company. I have no idea if it's still in business now or if they sold off or whatever. But these were RCA connectors. These were famous. You had to like twist them on, and then you had to untwist them off. But if you just like pressed them in and pulled directly, a lot of times on a cheaper receiver, it would pull the connector out with it, which would suck. But anyways, look at how big these connectors were, and that was basically bragging rights. So when you bought, basically, you spent some money, you have your friends over or whatever. It's like, and some of these equipment towers, we sold Bellagetti, which was glass and just black lacquer metal. And it was all out there in the open. Like, it was not in an enclosed cabinet. People that wanted more of the modern look would have it all open, and it would look awesome with all these connectors going in the back. So did this improve the sound? Did this improve the picture? Probably not. But did it look cool when you had it out in the open and you had it all on display? Yeah, it looked really cool. And again, a lot of it was bragging rights. And here is the M series connector. So believe it or not, this connector here was a little lower end. This was actually no, this looks like for car audio. Yeah, this is a shorter cable for car audio. So sometimes if you didn't have that much depth behind your receiver, you had to use the shorter depth stuff. I'm going all off of memory here too, guys. Look at this, gold plated. I mean, there's all gold, very blingy. All of it was made in China, but this is something you would put a cable on the end and you would attach to your speaker terminal. These guys here were popular too. So we would sell monster cable by the foot. There'd be a big spool, and then you'd kind of reel it off. You'd ask the guy, how far is your receiver from your speaker? Typically, we'd sell at least 15 feet. Like, you want a little bit extra just to be safe. But this was back in the day when, like, people like to show their audio equipment. Like, it was cool. There was kind of a thing going towards interior decorating where Bose was real famous with their lifestyle systems, and they made like little speakers. And then we also had in-wall speakers, so speakers that would basically be inside the wall, so it wouldn't mess up your interior decorating. But most audiophile, I should say audiophile guys, but most guys that wanted, like, they had the big TV, the big entertainment center, big old speakers, sticking out, and then, your friends would look at the back of the speaker, and then you'd see like something like this with the terminal, and then obviously you couldn't tell which was the positive and negative, so you would put these over it. And then it actually had like little screw ports there, and so you would actually take your wire here, whichever wire the sales guy sold you, and you'd like twist it, and then you basically twist it in, and it would stay. But this was the cool stuff. Like, you if you didn't have this, you were kind of considered like a cheap ass. So, like, you had the money to buy the equipment, but it's like, dude, you don't have the money to like buy the cables to connect them and make them, sound better. Again, this is someone that was spending some dough, and it was basically went hand in hand. It's like, all right, you want to maximize, what your stuff's going to sound like and look like. You don't want to chintz out on cables. You want to get the better stuff. But were there times like, I did numerous installations too. That was also back in the day too, before we had like professional installations. Yeah, we had custom installations where, we do that. But a lot of the sales guys would basically go out on their own, because you build up rapport with the client, and they, and they had like, their wife with them or whatever. I'm not trying to be sexist, guys. This is back in the 90s. So a lot of times, a couple would come in and they'd be like, yeah, can you please come out, this weekend, install it. We just moved in. You'd build trust, because why would you want to send some like weirdo alcoholic guy that smells like cigarettes out to your house that you haven't met, that's hired by your company? You as the salesperson would go out there and say, yeah, come on out. I charge like $60 an hour. Should only be about $150 for me to hook up everything. I'll make sure everything's hooked up, sound check. I'd actually have a little audio meter, set up all the speakers, and also show them how everything worked. I mean, stuff was like, yeah, there was instructions, but dude, that stuff back then was complicated, like different brands. And if it wasn't hooked up right, I don't know how many houses I went to where this was when DVDs first came out, and people had it. The picture was working, but they didn't go in the menu and turn on the digital for the DVD, and literally they're playing everything in analog. And as soon as I clicked it on the digital, this is when Dolby Digital came out. Holy smokes, massive difference. Anyways, so here's some of the speaker cable. This was like the higher end stuff, so this was a kind of a cool cable. Yes, you did hook up your highs and lows, or some higher end audio receivers actually had two sets of terminals for the left and the right. So you'd actually have to buy this type of cable. And yes, the speaker did have a connection for the highs and a connection for the lows. And then you'd have to remove this gold plated bridge that connected the tweeter and the mid range of the speaker from the subwoofer. The bass driver, and we even sold speakers that had built-in powered subwoofers, which would connect with an RCA connection directly out of the receiver, and you'd have a separate subwoofer level. But let's see here if I can recall. Bandwidth precision wound speaker cable. So the other thing too that Monster taught us was they would take the cables and they would wind them, and before they crimp them, put the plastic over it. And the reason they did that too is back then, radio was not digital like it is today. So radio was an analog signal. Your cell phone, a lot of people forget, remember those old StarTech flip cell phones? If you ever had that near your speaker system or anything, you'd hear this, it was like this weird noise, and it literally would be amplified throughout your sound system. So Monster Cable's like, hey, we're going to wind our cables so that way, instead of the signal that the cable's picking up like an antenna going from left to right, it's being exerted outward from the cable and not adding unwanted background noise or sound to your system. Sounds like an amazing invention, but it's kind of like common sense. This was really high end right here. This M1, yeah, this was the big, look at that. So they took the concept even further. So they took the cable itself, wound it, put this some kind of fiberglass plastic inside. This looks like 12 gauge. And then they would also intertwine they would use more expensive, finer copper, intertwine that, and wrap it around like this plastic pole, and then wrap each individual one around a plastic pole. So it's like they're definitely put more technology in this. So they used finer copper, more expensive copper, and then more plastic, right? So this was not just one big brick wire. This was basically marketed to say when your signal goes from point A to point B, and this is going to guarantee or help that signal gets there with correct timing. Could you hear the difference with this big cable on there? Honestly, guys, no. but and we had all these tests too, like us audio guys. But at the end of the day, it's like you'd have to do it this way. Like this is what you sold. Like this came with the program, and if you weren't selling it, that you kind of were missing the ball. Like you literally were like, so I know it sounds stupid, but back then people did care about showing off. Maybe a little bit more back then than they didn't. Now what do? We watch dudes like in renting Lamborghinis to get clout, this and that. Well, back then you got a nice sound system and you got Monster Cable on the back of it to show off your buddies. Like, hey, I've made it in the world. And it's not like people's fault. Like Monster Cable did a great job marketing that. So here's some other products. So this is a coax cable. So yes, they did sell coax cable, but look at that. There's no copper. This is like aluminum, which is probably, the cheapest way. Monster Video 2. Actually, this wasn't a RG6 cable connection. This basically, you'd put that regular terminal on the end. So this was for video. This guy here. Look at this one. M950i. These were big boys. A very short 3-foot connection of a M950 cable for audio. These were $100. $100 for just a right and a left. So basically, hook up your CD player, and you'd use this to connect your CD player. So people were spending $100. So this was more for like someone that we also sold Macintosh, which was very, very high end. I don't think we sold Carver, but sometimes people would come in, they'd get a tuner, a preamplifier, an actual dedicated amp. So some guys were just, into the 2-channel, and they'd buy something like this. Again, you were going to spend $5,000 on an amplifier. You're going to spend $10,000 on a set of speakers. You're going to spend $300 for the speaker wire. You're going to spend another, $200-$300 on a thing to plug all your equipment into to protect it from power surges. Dropping $100 on a pair of audio cables to connect this from your CD player to your preamp was no big deal. This was a drop in the bucket. So what a lot of guys too, that if you're still watching it, that forgot is back in the day, because people were like, man, Monster Cable is such a scam. Dude, it wasn't. I was not one of the top people of selling Monster Cable, but I do remember like each top guy from each store. Now, if I was in a different store, I would have been the top guy, but guys, I was making like up to $80,000 before I was even age 21 selling audio equipment. It was the coolest job ever. And then Tweeter came, bought us out. They combined this with Douglas TV across the street. It was a nightmare, and it got really, really poopy really fast. And then internet like basically blew up, and those type of stores disappeared, at least as far as those chains go. There's still some specialty stores, but all those chains, that one was corporate owned too. We were private, and then went corporate and went belly up. But here's some of the speaker wire. And this is good stuff, right? It's from the 90s. It has not turned green. Now, I've had it in this sales kit. But anyways, what was I getting at? So, but there were guys, like if you were the top salesperson in your store, Noli would hire, like a sales marketing guy, and you'd go out to California, and you would drive a Ferrari, you would drive a Lamborghini, you would drive whatever. They had stick and automatic, and that was part of the thing. So he would wine and dine you. All the top salespeople that sold the most Monster Cable in the country at different types of high-end audio stores. And then he'd be like, yeah, come on out for a weekend of fun, drinking, not gambling, but drinking, and driving high-end cars, and just wine and dine you. Like that's the marketing genius behind it. So if you were one of the top Monster Cable sales dudes, you got to go out there. I wasn't as much back when they were doing those contests, because I wasn't really doing much of the custom. Like we had custom home guys that literally would sell and fill an entire house full of Monster Cable before it was even moved into. They had this type of stuff, but it was plenum rated, fire rated to go inside walls. Actually, here it is right here. Look at that as I talk about plenum rating. So this is the type of stuff that they would also see, custom installation speaker cable. And I didn't like this flat stuff, because when you stapled over it, although they probably made special staples, you could sometimes staple right through it. So if you hired some low voltage dude, had a bad night, drinking too much the day before, you'd literally get shorts, because they'd staple this and then you put drywall over it. You have no idea that the reason why that connection sucks is someone literally drove a staple right through the copper. But anyways, I just wanted to go down memory lane with you guys. Honestly, Monster Cable was a great marketing company. They did an awesome job. I owned a lot of, I still own a lot of their stuff. A lot of it I sold off, because I don't have a high-end receiver or any of that stuff anymore, because again, nobody really cares about that. Most of us just watch stuff on our phones. But this definitely is a piece of history. This is a complete kit. I don't care about it as much as maybe an audiophile would like to have maybe an example of this in their collection. Again, I know a lot of you guys have really, really nice high-end audio stuff. But this is a very rare pocket sales kit that is complete. It has not been pillaged, and I think I grabbed like 10 of these or something. There would be a lot of times where they would just like handle the stuff. Each sales guy had one of these in their sales drawer. So when someone actually had a question about Monster Cable, you'd basically bring this out and say, all right, this is this cable. This is why this one, you know, instead of $20, this one's 100. And then you'd show the actual inside. And they were lifetime guaranteed too. So if someone brought one in and said, hey, the connector doesn't work, they'd bring it in, we'd swap it out, we'd send it to Monster, and Monster would give us our money back as far as the company goes. That was back in the day too, where there's so much markup, like they didn't care. Like if someone had a problem with one of their wires, bring it into the shop, we'd swap it out, give them a brand new one, and then we'd send it back to them, problem solved. And we did that a lot too with receivers. If it was something that we still had in stock, we would just basically give them the new stock in the back, send their broken receiver back to the manufacturer, get our money back, and so on and so forth. So that was a cool, back in the day, you know, when internet buying wasn't as vigilant or as dominant as it is today. That's something we did back then. So anyways, guys, hopefully you like the video. I just want to share some history with you on something that you probably didn't think I knew anything about, but I definitely knew all about this. And this was high margin stuff. Some of it was like, you know, 50%. So for example, if I sold that $100 set of cables, I would probably make at least $20 in commission. So that's me. That's after, you know, the company and everyone else got their cut. So those $100 cables were probably wholesale were like $40. At least that's the price that we saw. And Monster Cable probably made those $100 cables for probably like $5 back in the day. So anyways, guys, appreciate you guys watching. Please like, share, subscribe. You'll never know what I'm going to do a video on. Talk to you in the next one.